Charles.
Jason.
So I'm sorry about the sunglasses inside. I left my regular glasses in the car. I'm going to break the line of some kind of a school field trip here. I'm in D.C., Charles. Again, the swamp, it has a way of creating a vortex that sucks you in. But I'm in a pretty cool spot that I hope that you and our viewers will enjoy. Can you guess where I am?
You're at the CIA?
No, I think they'd probably tackle me if I went anywhere near that. But I'm inside the Capitol building, Charles.
Way to go.
I've never been in here before.
Nice.
Yeah.
The Capitol Police let you in?
They did. I mean, this is like the tourist area, and I'm told that there is a whole big tour, but I don't know if that's necessarily compatible with our show this afternoon. But there are some areas that you can just walk around and explore on your own. They have these kind of statues to people I've never heard of. You probably know who they are.
Probably DWMs.
Well, I don't know. But
Dead white male.
No, I was looking around a little bit over here, and I did see Frederick Douglass. Before we get into the very pressing news of the day, if you don't mind, I'm just going to take you on a little brief tour of the Capitol here. You and I have been outside the Capitol. You've visited it on video many times, but today this is the first time ever for me being inside here. And you get a tour over here, but they said it takes over an hour and you need tickets, and I don't really know. I just want to show you this. They have Helen Keller right here. What does she have to do with the U.S. government?
I don't know.
Well, she's there. And then they have, this is somebody from North Dakota. Oh, Sacagawea, member of the Lewis and Clark. Sacagawea, but there's no J there. Sacagawea. Maybe that's pronounced Sacagawea. And then I think this is maybe Liberace. I don't know who this is. Oh, this is Kamehameha, King of Hawaii. Oh, so I don't know. They have some strange statues in here, Charles. Here's Frederick Douglass over here.
For New Jersey, they have Snooki?
They don't have Snooki, but I could recommend it. Is a good idea. Frederick Douglass they made sort of short, I think. It's racist. He's on a shorter podium than the other guys. And then this thing, I don't know if you can see it back there, Charles. This is a model, this is a plaster model of the bronze statue on the top of the dome.
Nice.
And then there's a museum back here that we'll kind of walk through quickly. But why don't you, before we get to the rundown of everything, I do want to remind everybody that they can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. I've been very pleased with a lot of people are joining Odyssey, Charles, and that's great because, social engineers seem to really hate Odyssey, I think, because it's an independent thing. But this is a good place for people to come to. Lots of government artifacts in here. What do you think about this?
As I've said before, I think one solution, and it's radical, but one solution to draining the swamp is to exiting Washington, D.C. Or to exit Washington, D.C. and relocate the Capitol and the Supreme Court and whatever the building would be where the president would live, next to him the executive branch would operate, to a city that is not 95% Democrat, that is not as stuck into the cliques that all exist, really to suppress conservatives, to burn government money, to get us involved, to worship at the altar of Our Lady of Perpetual War. And I think to change that, you've got to get out of here, get out of Washington, D.C. And we've, over time, our ancestors and we have spent a lot of money creating what would be, I think, a very interesting Disneyland-style operation.
That's what
Trump
this is.
It's being attributed to him the idea that if he gets to be president again, what they're going to do is they're going to have pay-per-view. They do executions of drug dealers on TV, pay-per-view.
That's crazy. I would watch it.
To bring down the government debt, we're going to kill the drug dealers.
That's a
But
pretty controversial position, though, Charles. You know, Lee Stranahan brought up a good point. I've always been pretty much in support of the death penalty, but Lee said he doesn't support it because it just gives the government too much power, and you know they're going to make mistakes. And how terrible would it be to put somebody to death who was wrongly convicted? So that resonated with me, to tell you the truth, now that I have a better idea of how so many of the systems that we've come to rely on, like court and the cops and all that stuff, can be manipulated.
offsetting that, of course, the average person on death row spends 20 years fighting the imposition of the sentence. So I don't know the right answer to that, but I do think it's time. We've done it once before, maybe twice before. I think under the Articles of Confederation period, I'm not sure where the country was run, which city the country was run from. It might have been Philadelphia. Under the Constitution, it was New York for a time, and then it became Washington, D.C. So it's not as if we haven't done it before. And think of the economies that could be achieved. We're talking about the FBI, of all places, is talking about a building twice the size of the Pentagon.
Yeah, that's crazy.
House that. And I think it should be a tenth the size of the FBI building.
Make them all work from home.
5% of the current agents at the FBI and none of the administrators.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a lot of efficiency that they could seek and eliminate some of the waste. That would be nice.
But it is, at certain times of the year, it is definitely enjoyable to go to Washington, D.C. There are some nice restaurants and hotels, and if you make it alive from the train station to the airport into the center of the city, survive while you're there, it's probably an experience worth having.
Yeah. Well, there's actually a restaurant inside this Capitol building. I won't be going there, but I found that interesting. There's a lot of weird stuff down here, Charles. I mean, it literally is just kind of like a straight museum with a lot of artifacts that you wouldn't necessarily think would be in here, but
At the house with Dianne Feinstein and these other artifacts.
She's another artifact. Yeah, they showed a picture of her. She apparently didn't realize that she had said she was going to resign, and she was kind of embarrassed by that. But I was thinking, they showed a picture of her, when she was new or young and first coming in. And I was just thinking, like, man, what's it going to be like after AOC has been in Congress for 147 years?
She's going to be a character on Family Guy, like
exactly.
The female of that old pervert the pervert.
Somebody's abuela by then.
Grand abuela.
Exactly. Well, I mean, this is a nice museum for kids and stuff, I guess. It's pretty interesting. I'm not going to get an opportunity, unfortunately, to take a crap on Nancy Pelosi's desk. I think you have to do that only in violation of the law, and it's not recommended. Wow, look at this. So I guess this is a little sort of diorama of how it was under construction. It's an impressive bit of construction given when it was made. It's got a lot of underground stuff, and I guess you get a good sense of the relief of the hill. Everybody says, oh, I'm on the hill. You gotta, if you want to be a Washington, D.C. insider, Charles, you gotta know what's going on. And definitely I do not know that stuff because, I was trying to give out some more Twitter reports today, Twitter coup report, and nobody is here. They're all in the district, and I found out that means not here. They're back at their respective, home districts because Congress is not in session. So I had another reason for coming here that I'm not going to discuss right now for various reasons. Perhaps in the future we'll be able to talk about that, but it is strange, and it's part of what I was talking about before with some of these systems that we rely on being pretty corrupt. Look, they have an astronaut over there, Charles.
That's it.
So that's maybe because Joe Biden is in space?
It's not the only one.
Something like
No,
that.
that's John Penn was the secretary.
Oh, right, exactly. That makes a lot of sense. Anyway, there's so much... What's that?
Mark Kelly as well. I forget whether he got through or didn't get through, but he was an astronaut.
Well, it's good to have, considering most of Congress is already in space, we might as well have them all be astronauts. But Charles, there's a ton of pressing stuff going on. They've just revealed the bail sugar daddies for Sam Bankman-Fried. Pretty shocking, right?
Well, I don't understand how those two Stanford law professors have enough money to backstop. Was it $250 million bond? I think you need to come up with 10%.
That's crazy, isn't it? 25 million bucks?
Yeah, and I do really call into question. I mean, the Abby Lowell, who's attempting to defend Hunter, threatened a bunch of charities for getting unduly involved in politics. I think we need to remember that Stanford is a charity. And so if it is the case that Sam Bankman-Fried and his family were basically interfering in elections by using his scheme to funnel elements of value to finance favored candidates, and we're doing that under the umbrella of the Stanford University charity, then, and in particular involving law professors, then I think Stanford has an extremely serious problem.
They got a lot of splaining to do.
Well, it's not. Stanford is not allowed to be a funding organization to get more grants for its various medical school and the other pieces of Stanford that need government money and take government money. So this would be a really egregious violation of bedrock principles involving how charities are supposed to conduct themselves.
Yeah. It's amazing, but, you know, I don't know. Do you think anything's going to happen to those guys? I mean, they allowed them to do it. I don't even know why they did that.
I frankly don't know. I know that the trustee for FTX bankruptcy is demanding that the politicians return the money.
How is that going to happen? Haven't they spent it already?
Well, most of these politicians have other places to get money. So they'll figure a way to find some way to give money, burn money, so they give the money back. There's certainly a damage control though.
Well, there's a whole lot of other stuff going on, I know, that was piquing your interest. We've been having a lot of emails back and forth, even while I've been walking around the office buildings realizing that nobody is home. The Senate is in, and I did get to speak to a few Senate staff members, try to arrange some appointments with some of the senators that have been, Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson, and just a few of the senators that have been participating in these hearings that are trying to help us understand exactly how the government was weaponized against we the people. It's a disgrace.
So, in terms of the stories that are popping up to the surface now, clearly the art department did great work in increasing the Up in Smoke poster with different
Thank you.
Fibers. But I mean, this fellow Buttigieg is so far away from being somebody who should be in charge of it, and seems to have unbridled belief that he alone deserves to rule we the miniature people. I mean, his performance as mayor of South Bend, I mean, their local reporters have just continued to shred his destructive influences in that college town, which should have been easy to manage.
Yeah.
And now, instead of the buck stops here, Buttigieg just probably send the bucks over to Chasen so we can afford this expensive vacation. He takes responsibility for nothing as Secretary of Transportation. It's preposterous. So many things are simultaneously going wrong with the smooth hand of this idiot. And this, when he got up belatedly after the chemical spill, it's just spoke. He said, and after little COVID with the prior administration, port problems that are a problem, air problems that are a problem, problems. I just that's 10 seconds.
Charles, I'm having a little bit of a difficult time hearing you. I wonder if people in the audience are having difficulty as well. Yeah, people are saying it's kind of hard to hear you. Could you try flipping that switch on your microphone that we located the other day, see if that doesn't Help it. Check. Let's hear you say something. Anything? Oh no, we're getting into testing now, which is not good. Are you saying anything? Are you saying anything? Huh. Yeah, I don't know. Not having good performance from the microphone. Charles is breaking up. Charles' audio is bad, people are saying. 0 by 5. Wow, we're getting a lot of messages that the audio from that microphone is not working. Is there maybe a different headset you could use, or unplug it and replug it? It was fine.
No.
Oh wait, maybe now it's back. Let's hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, let's go with that. That sounds fine. Much better.
Okay.
Great, but much better.
Now you're coming in very soft, though.
Well, we're going to have to examine those headphones that you've got there. Then it got really quiet, somebody said. Maybe they're not plugged in all the way. I don't know, but if people can hear you now, I wouldn't mess with it.
Okay.
There we
Let's
go.
keep going.
Okay, and if maybe turn up your volume, you might be able to hear me better. Okay, the mic is kind of effed
I
up.
hesitate to do that because
I think we're good. I can hear you well now, so people should be able to hear you. If you can hear me, we're
All
good
right.
to go. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, Pete Buttigieg, now people say 5 by 5. Excellent troubleshoot, Charles. Pete Buttigieg, total idiot. I've also noticed the U.S. Capitol Police are nearly as fat and incompetent as the NYPD. But let's get back to Buttigieg. Whose idea was it to light all the chemical stuff in Ohio on fire?
Well, he probably called Hillary Clinton. Said, do you have any of that bleach bit? Why don't we use the bleach bit on the chemicals? And while we're at it, why don't we bleach bit the entire town? I mean, the residents of that town, there are now more and more reports of them being absolutely terrified as their animals die with no explanation, and they're worried about whether they themselves are going to die with no explanation. It's really
Fox News 10 animals, and the guy said that they're all lethargic.
Now, I can barely.
Why is this?
You there?
on this? Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. Okay. I put a minute ago.
Well, good.
Charles, have I got you? I'm going to have to do away with this thing for a second. It's worked better. I don't know why this thing is always such a hassle. You hear me?
You're very soft. On a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 1.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I don't know why that is. This thing used to work really well, and now it's a disaster.
That's better.
Okay, so let's go with that. So, Pete Buttigieg, total disaster.
Okay.
Animals dying in Ohio. And has Biden said anything about
and really everywhere we look. I mean, Kamala Harris was interviewed and she was asked, would this Chinese spy plane incident affect our relations with China? And she said, no, I don't think so.
So stupid.
We want to be competitive, but not contentious. I mean, if that's not going to affect our relations with China, what might?
I just think that do we know that it's a Chinese
person.
balloon, or did they make that up because they're trying to distract us from Ohio exploding and secret documents at Joe Biden's house and the United States bombing the Nord Stream pipelines? I mean, it seems like floating a balloon and shooting it and now arguing about aliens for a week got people off of topics they didn't like.
Well, I think if you were to go, when you come back, maybe we'll go to Washington Square Park again, and we'll start interviewing for replacement members of the Biden cabinet. I mean, I think if we went to the drug dealer section where Methuselah lives on a box.
Yeah.
And we just explained to these guys, listen, you don't have to take any risks anymore. You can, you'll be deciding who gets prosecuted. So this will be great for you. You'll have chauffeur-driven cars and jets. You'll have homes. You'll have money in your bank. You want to pay taxes. You can have your own foundation. What do you want? Seriously, you want Treasury? The main drug dealer over here. You want, I don't know, be in the Air Force? Take Millie's job? I mean, the collection of idiots that are paraded out as supposedly vaunted members of the Biden cabinet. Now, there is some good news today, Jason.
What's that?
I sent you quite a few emails because there was a lot of breaking news in the last 2 hours, but one of which, on Valentine's Day, Mark Penn, a guy who went to Horace Mann a number of years ahead of me, and Andrew Stein, who was a New York City official, wealthy family, penned an op-ed in the New York Post saying unequivocally that Biden needs to go.
Yeah, I saw that.
Two very strong Democrats.
Yeah.
Very influential. Well, Stein is less influential, but Mark Penn is extremely influential. And to write that kind of a thing on Valentine's Day, no less.
Why does Valentine's Day matter?
Well, because I think they're basically going out and saying, look, we're Democrats, and we think for the good of the party, Joe Biden needs to go, i.e., he needs to resign. Forget about running.
Well, do you think he will? I mean, has anybody responded to that thing?
Well, it just came out. It's dated the 14th, so I don't know when it was actually. I mean, it might have been dated the 14th and published today, but I saw it today, a number of hours ago. That's positive. Where are you?
I don't know. This is what's happening at the Summer House. The architect of the Capitol is undertaking a restoration project to repair the infrastructure of the Summer House to preserve it for future generations. How is this a house? It looks like a well or something.
Well, the architect of the Capitol was just fired.
I saw that. Why was that?
He apparently misused government property. He was on vacation and he took government vehicles down to pal around with his family and lied about it. And actually McCarthy called for him to be fired and Biden actually fired him.
Boy.
Must have been pretty bad.
That's weird to see who they choose to fire for what. It seems like depending on what you steal, they maybe don't care.
He's going to fire the lunch lady next.
Yeah, the lunch lady. Lunch ladies get into trouble.
The other thing that I think is quite significant, and things have changed on this story in the last 2-3 hours, is that as we discussed in our last broadcast, Seymour Hersh's Substack produced a second report today. I actually don't like to subscribe to these type of things because I hate charges that go on your card and you forget about them and whatever, but I actually subscribed. And I would strongly encourage people to do that, not because I accept 100% what he's saying, but I admire the man's record. His politics and mine are quite different, but I think he's performing an immense service and to the world, frankly, doing what he's doing here.
Yeah.
And interestingly, since the morning when his second post arrived, he's given more and more interviews. He gave one to a very important newspaper in Berlin, the Berliner Zeitung, and provided a bit more color on the approach that he's taking. He's quite obviously a guy like Hersh has got to be cagey to remain alive and in business and functioning. But I read some of his comments. He said, I have a history of protecting my source. And I think what he's telling you there is he's using source. That doesn't mean it's only one. He doesn't have to say how many he has. Right. He may have more than one.
Right.
And the fact that he gave this interview in a German newspaper that's highly regarded in Berlin.
Yeah.
He's basically has already, I think, ignited a firestorm inside Germany, where Germans must be asking, how in the hell could the United States president, with no oversight from Congress, and
do
this
that?
Idiot Jake Sullivan, how could they convene a super secret team and decide that, for whatever reason, and not necessarily knowing how warm or cold this winter will be, that we ought to go ahead, the U.S. with Norway, we ought to go ahead and blow up, create an environmental disaster by blowing up or attempting to blow up these two pipelines.
Well, how about the effect
And
on people in Germany? Isn't it almost a declaration of war to people in Germany? Should I talk to these people, Charles? This is from this Chinese whatever. Hi.
sure.
What do you got here? Oh yeah, the new federal state of China.
Yes, we're doing a live broadcast too, sir.
Okay.
Would you like to be interviewed or interviewed?
Well, I can't really be interviewed right now, but I just wanted to stop and see what you guys are doing. I've been by here a few times, and I see you're out here all the time. You're really
Yeah.
dedicated.
So we are the investor of the GTV, the Anti-Communist Party media platform.
Oh,
And then
GTV. So do you guys
Yeah.
own Getter?
No.
Isn't that
No.
guy Miles?
Miles Gore?
Yeah,
No, he didn't own that.
but didn't he own GTV?
No, he did not.
He didn't.
We own it.
You own
We
it.
But then it shut us down. But here's some info.
Well, save that. I'll go to the website. What's the website people should go to learn
Oh
more?
yeah, right here. It's on Getter.
It is on Getter.
Yeah, it is on Getter, but we did
But
not
you don't
the
own Getter.
I don't own Getter, but you can scan the
Getter.
QR code. if
Okay,
you wanted
people can
to
check
look
it
at
out on
Yeah,
Getter. All right,
check
well,
it
thank
out.
you very much, and
Thank
good
you.
luck with the new federal state of China. Charles, I'm a little suspicious of this new federal state of China. They don't own Getter, but they're on Getter, and they don't know Miles Gong or whatever, but he owns Getter or doesn't own Getter, or I don't know what the deal is, but they're here often.
So now you're on that. Is this the road that we walked?
Yeah, that's what I was doing. I'm back sort of, now I'm further away. We weren't exactly over here on the day of January 6th, but up over there is sort of where we were hanging out, and I just noticed those Chinese protesters earlier and wanted to check them out, because you might remember, I don't know if it was January 6th, but sometime I came to DC, there was a woman with that group who spoke English very well. And I mean, I don't know. I always just wonder, how do we know that's not put there by the CCP to see who is coming to talk to them and then monitor those people? But perhaps I'm being paranoid. It's a beautiful day.
Could be.
I didn't
So
mean to,
just
yeah.
continuing then with Hersh.
Yes.
So he's done a series of interviews. He seems to be focused on independent American sites and foreign, more traditional media sources. And that approach does resonate with me. After all, he's taking on the sitting president of the United States and the National Security Advisor. And let's compare and contrast the way, Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, is allowed to run roughshod over the Constitution. But Michael Flynn, being, for just several days, National Security Advisor for Trump, isn't allowed to have customary phone calls in transition with ambassadors from various nations that are resident in Washington, D.C. I think it's just a stark and stunning contrast. And this Jake Sullivan needs to be benched, first of all. Secondly, I hope that Durham and others investigating what actually happened in 16 and afterwards will take note of the central role that Jake Sullivan played, first working for Hillary Clinton as a deputy of hers in the State Department for her 4 years during the first term of Obama, and then second as National Security Advisor for Joe Biden, and then third as a central player in Clinton's second failed attempt to be president of the United States in 2016, and then fourth as a prime player in the resistance, and fifth in the campaign to get rid of Trump, which began well before the election of 2020. This is a man who just believes that he's protected, that the Constitution applies to everybody else and all these other rules apply to everybody else, but he's not to him.
There's a lot of people like that in D.C., Charles. I've been interacting with some of them. I don't like them.
Yeah, it's horrible. That's why I go to Washington, D.C. as infrequently as possible. But
I'm actually not even allowed to tell you about them. It's weird.
yeah, so don't.
Oh no, I won't.
So the other thing that's bubbling to the top here, I've begun to get back on Twitter, in part to promote the show, in part to prepare for the launch of my own Substack. So every day now, what I'm doing is 10 tweets minimum in a numbered, linked approach. And then as the spirit moves me, I may add some other tweets. But in the course of doing that today, somebody was watching what I was doing and asked me to take a look at a sleuth I don't have the name of it. I think it's like Forward Thinker or something like that. It's on my Twitter feed at Charles Ortel. This is somebody who's been following Durham and following various investigations, including one involving this Eric Lichtblau.
Ah, yes.
Now Eric Lichtblau, I looked him up again on Wikipedia. He's somebody who cares a lot about stopping warrantless wiretapping, but he also wrote a book about how the Nazis infiltrated the U.S.
Really? I think I need to contact Eric Lichtblau.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he wants to talk to me, though.
And he describes, anyway, in this lengthy Substack entry, which people can see on my Twitter feed and link to and review for themselves, a central piece of it was, in the middle of the decision whether to go after Hillary Clinton for the many abuses perpetrated while she was Secretary of State and afterwards, James Comey supposedly came across a memo.
Right.
And the question was, the memo seemed to suggest that, an insider seemed to suggest that somebody a senior employee at George Soros's Open Society Foundation was assured by somebody in the Justice Department that the investigation into Hillary Clinton would not follow its course into the heart of the matter, and that nothing serious would happen to Hillary. And that comports with what we reported on, and others have reported on, and makes sense in light of Loretta Lynch's, then the Attorney General, long-standing association in a subservient way with the Clintons. And she was, after all, with Hillary, in charge of stopping any fair consideration of the many scandals swirling around the Clintons in 1992 after the Jennifer Flowers story. She owes a major debt of gratitude to Bill for being made U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of New York. So
a lot of bad people have been U.S. attorneys in the Eastern
Holder
District of New York.
They would put in somebody loyal to the Clintons.
A lot of
And
bad
that they
people.
would say, all right, sorry?
A lot of bad people have been U.S. attorneys in the Eastern District of New York.
Right. And, they go through, I can't do the imitation as well as you do, but it's theater, Rand Paul, bad theater.
Yeah.
Of Comey and Lynch and others trying to get to the bottom of things. But in the middle of all this, after Trump had won, but before Comey was fired, Lichtblau was one of 4 New York Times authors who on April 22nd, 2017, penned a story suggesting, or following up on an earlier story dated, I think, October 31, 2016, that the Russians may have been meddling, but it wasn't to get Trump elected. And so I really think so far we have not gotten even close to the straight scoop of what was actually going on with Ukraine, Russia, and other foreign partners attempting to tip the scales either in favor of Hillary Clinton, in favor of Trump, against Hillary. We haven't gotten to the bottom of it all. We don't know the true extent of foreign actor involvement in our elections. And it is, I suppose, fitting that foreign actors would do to us, it's not good, but it's fitting that they would do to us what we've done around the world under both administrations, Republican and Democrat, going back decades now. We've felt that
before we move off of that article about Lichtblau, though, there's a couple things I wanted to ask you about. Because I agree with you, it's all very important, and it all really leaves more questions than answers to what was going on in 2016. But first of all, they're talking in that article about a guy named like Leonardo Bernardo or something. I mean, doesn't that sound a little ridiculous to you? I guess it could be the guy's real name, but it seems like so often we have people with these stupid names who I think might be fake names, and they always seem to be political operatives. The other thing is, he said he's never communicated with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz said she never communicated with him. Now, someone might say, oh, well, they're lying. But there was also a whole component in there about one of these Twitter accounts that you're talking about speculating that the email could have been written by Imran Awan, because there was that whole, some email came to the surface where Debbie Wasserman Schultz revealed that Imran Awan had her laptop or her iPad with the login information or something like that. And I don't know, we don't have any evidence that Imran Awan did it. I've never seen any written communications from Imran Awan. I don't know if someone with English as a second language could write those kind of emails, but it's an interesting idea that the emails were faked and forged, and that rings true to me, Charles, because you know, the limited number of political operatives who I have had the misfortune of coming in contact with, they seem to love to do crap like that, fake and forge emails, you know what I mean?
Well, absolutely, including Hillary, including Bill, including Obama, including, you know, many people seem to have in government who are supposed to be communicating with regard to government business solely using government email and other secure forms of communication.
No, not just that. Not just that they're using private email. I'm saying fabricating identities, fabricating emails, forging documents, claiming they were sent by one party when they were sent by another. So, do you see this tent city over here, Charles?
Yeah. You think they're moving in?
No, I mean, I'm just saying this is bad. We're here in the middle of the Capitol. Isn't this the National Archives building right here where Sandy Berger shoving things in his pants, or am I wrong?
I think the National Archives and Records Administration headquarters is in Maryland.
It's something, and then we've got, well, I'm not sure what this building is, but there's a big tent city right in front of it, right here in the middle of our Capitol.
Looking back to the email question, Jason,
yeah.
What I'm saying to you is, in the olden days, before internet, there was basically your signature, your physical signature was your signature.
Right.
And you had, when you used typewriters, whatever, you had official carbon copies, and there was a filing system and all that kind of stuff. With email, and Hillary is one of these people who thinks she's too smart by half. You'll remember that she would always answer questions about email saying, I neither sent nor received an email.
Doesn't mean she didn't write it.
Open the possibility that she could communicate by going into the draft folder.
Yeah.
Or by having somebody else communicate in her name. And there needs to be enough of this, there needs to be an end to this practice of letting liars hold positions of trust. And I think at the root here, the root problem is.
You were on the flag.
You there?
I'm just paying attention to this immediate threat here. Hang on just a second, Charles.
Okay. You say.
No, we're still on. We're not going anywhere. I'm just looking at the guy. He's standing down. Please continue.
Away,
yeah, he did. Please continue.
Who was that?
I don't know the man, but seemed like a crazy guy.
Was it Hunter?
That was not Hunter. I'm not a biologist, but I think that guy was black, and I'm pretty sure Hunter Biden is white.
But anyway, there's been so much, not just obfuscation. I think the word is despoliation of evidence in relating to many of these administrations, going back to Reagan and likely beforehand. So crucial evidence that could be used to inform reasoned analysis of what actually happened is missing on purpose.
Correct.
And
on purpose.
It seems that.
Yes, I agree. On purpose.
Yeah. So anyway, back to that story that's on my website, on my Twitter feed. I'd encourage people to read that. I'd encourage people to consider subscribing to Seymour Hersh. And from what I can tell, I think that Hersh is playing many steps ahead of the mainstream press.
I agree.
Remember, he knows a lot of these people at senior levels.
From back in the day, knows them probably from, the 70s.
Right. But the thrust of the revelations, he throws a few more breadcrumbs with each interview that he's done. So with the Berliner Zeitung thing, he actually says, because the interviewer asked a few questions, he says that people who approached him were disgusted by the risks, in so many words, by the risks that President Biden and Jake Sullivan were taking, and their indifference to the potential damage, the likely damage to the German people and to NATO and to the cross-Atlantic alliances.
And the escalation of the war.
Inside, and I would guess the CIA, but I don't know.
Well, but also the escalation
just
of the
couldn't
war,
believe
right?
That Biden would do what he, Jake Sullivan, appeared to have done.
Yeah. No, it's terrible. It's one of the worst things you could imagine. Now, the other thing I wanted to tell you that augments what Sey Hersh is saying, I had mentioned briefly that John Mark Dougan had interviewed a Danish NATO officer, and yesterday on the Backstory on Lee's radio show on Sputnik Radio, he played that clip again, so I got to hear it again. And, you know, Mark was reading an email from the guy, and it has got so much detailed information about the amount of helium that these divers the guy observed had with him, and his assessments of how long you could stay down with a saturation dive, you know, using these rebreathers that sometimes use nitrogen, but the more advanced and newer version is to use helium, what's called a heliox dive. And it also, this email that John Mark Dougan was reading spoke about a prototype piece of Navy equipment called, I think, MK-29 or something like that. People can listen to the Backstory from yesterday to get it exactly. But I looked that up while we were on air, and sure enough, it was a Navy prototype heliox rebreather that was designed to use 80% less helium, and it had all kinds of exotic components that were 3D printed, that were designed to obviously allow technical divers to stay down below much, much longer, and to, you know, control the cost both of obtaining and diving with huge amounts of helium. And I think it's certainly probable that the Navy could make some sort of technological breakthrough. This guy from NATO was saying that he was unaware of divers being able to stay down at that depth for more than 3 hours, and that these divers were gone for about 6 hours. They had given the NATO people a story that they were there hunting for mines, but this Danish officer who was writing to John Mark Dougan said that he did not observe any of the equipment that would normally be used for hunting mines, and that each of these people did not look like military officers of any military, because they had disheveled hair and tattoos. He said they looked more like terrorists, and he presumed that they were intelligence officers. So talk about detail and adding color. This is separate. Obviously, John Mark Dougan doesn't know, as far as I know, I don't think he knows Sey Hersh. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the Department of Justice right in front of me. Is it?
Curve there?
United States, no, this thing. Isn't that the DOJ building? Do you know?
I can't tell this.
Well, we'll check it out more closely, but what do you think about that corroboration, third-party corroboration from John Mark Dougan's contact?
I think it's sensible, and you know, at the same time, we have General Mark Silly getting up there either yesterday or today, saying, you know, it's clear that Russia's lost the war, and
it's ridiculous.
They're a pariah. You know, unlike the United States, we're going to be really popular in Germany.
Right.
Well, we fought Germany twice, and you know, now this third time, why don't you be our most important ally so we could bomb you and have your people freeze to death this coming winter? I mean, I got to believe there are elements within Germany who are really pissed off.
Rightly so. I mean, it's literally an act of war. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is the DOJ building, and that's the FBI headquarters that they want to make, you know, much bigger, so that they can continue to fail to, you know, solve any crimes or stop anybody from doing mass shootings. I don't know why they need a bigger building to do that. Oh, yeah, it says Department of Justice right there.
I mean, aren't you supposed to lower your carbon footprint?
Well, maybe they'll build half of it underground.
Yeah, but the act of building, I mean, what are they going to use? Are they going to follow Pete Buttigieg's observation and use people of color to do all this construction?
Do you recognize this symbol, Charles?
It's very tough for me to see it, Jason.
It's the opposite of the no bullshit symbol. Right outside the Department of Justice. Should I go ask them if Christopher Wray is home?
I wouldn't do that.
No, I don't think they would appreciate it.
Wouldn't do that. We want to do our next show.
And so has Joe Biden himself addressed any of these allegations from Sey Hersh, or we're not up to that part yet?
Oh, I think the approach of Karine and his press secretary and others is just to ignore it, and the other to say it's completely false.
False, right? That's what I've heard.
Yeah. And
But
that's
they've provided no
no
evidence, Charles. They've provided no evidence that Russia did this, and now Seymour Hersh and this Danish NATO officer via John Mark Dougan have provided extremely compelling evidence that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's basically very difficult if the United States says Russia did it, they need to present some evidence. And there's none, obviously.
Well, don't forget the great John Cullen and what he did with that flight tracker thing.
Right, the P-8 Poseidon, exactly, right. He was reporting on MonkeyWorks' video about flight radar, or there's some new 3D one that's better than flight radar. I forget what it's called. But yeah, John was telling us about just the fact that a Poseidon P-8 was in that vicinity refueling, what the hell is the explanation for that? That alone is strong evidence that the United States was doing something there that we shouldn't have been doing.
Well, and we are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the beginning of this, at least the beginning of the Russian special military operation. Putin is giving a speech soon. I forget if it's tomorrow or imminently, and he's disinvited any media representatives from unfriendly nations.
As he should.
There are reports that I've read, which may or may not be true, that Russia has now, for the first time in quite a long time, moved tactical nuclear weapons onto ships.
Yes, I saw that. They're floating ships in the
Atlantic. And when you have
or
Milley, who really, Milley should be ashamed of himself. How that guy actually, he's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I mean, he is a caricature.
He's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Stupid.
Yeah, he's just an idiot. And to get up there and taunt and poke and lie incessantly about what's going on with the war, and that's a point that Hersh makes in his interview in the Berliner Zeitung, it's an open secret, he claims, among the CIA people in the know in Washington, D.C., that we're losing the Ukraine war, and we're going to lose it. And we could have settled this 10 months ago.
Wow. And not lost billions and had all these people get killed.
Over 100 billion so far.
Wow. Well, what about the people killed? I mean, this is just crazy. How Joe Biden is not getting impeached over Afghanistan, over this. This is the most ripe for impeachment president there has ever been in my lifetime.
Well, and that's before you get to, and you alluded to it, this new revelation from Seamus Bruner, who I think used to work with Peter Schweitzer, may still do that, and has done a book, I think, with John Solomon, that the University of Delaware was approached by Hunter in 2016. Now, mind you, in 2016, before the election, I and others were relentlessly pounding the Clinton Foundation, in particular the most crooked part of it is the Clinton Global Initiative, because that doesn't exist technically, and even if it existed, it's certainly not a charity. So by months after, almost a year after, I've been relentlessly pounding this, and Schweitzer had done a book on it, Dan Halper's movie was coming out on it, in part. This idiot Hunter Biden is sending emails to his business partner and working with the president of the University of Delaware to set up the Clinton Global Initiative / World Economic Forum to be held once a year at the University of Delaware. Now, I have no particular beef to pick with the good people of Delaware, but my former father-in-law was the chairman of the chairman of the history department at the University of Delaware, and I spent a fair amount of time off and on in Newark, and it's not a place that a bunch of world leaders are going to decide every year to go. I mean, it's not Davos. It's not New York.
No.
And the notion that Hunter and these other guys would gush over the theory that it's going to be like the Clinton Global Initiative, but it's going to build wealth for the Biden family, and we won't have to do any money raising. This is in the
Did he say that? It's going to build wealth for the Biden family? He literally said that in the email?
Yeah.
What a dunce. Charles, do you know what this is right here behind me?
I can't see. No.
Well, it was the Trump International, old post office hotel, but now it's the Waldorf Astoria. I think he sold it or something.
Is that where you're staying?
No. I think this hotel is like $500 a night, and the parking at this hotel costs more than the place I'm staying. but they have Benjamin Franklin here. It's ridiculous what Hunter Biden is doing, and they also said that there was a huge amount of Chinese money going to the University of Delaware right after he created that thing. So I don't know, have they looked for any hidden classified documents there? There probably are some. Any Corvettes?
Exactly. And again, when sometimes, it's easy to be critical, and I'm not trying to be critical here. I'm merely suggesting that Hersh should, as they were using this phrase, open up his aperture and look beyond the Nord Stream pipeline thing, because he made the comment, which I think is incorrect, that Biden wasn't breaking any laws by blowing up this pipeline.
What?
Now, that might be true.
Wait a minute.
I just want to focus on blowing up the pipeline part. But if you want to layer in taking money from foreign governments illegally, not paying taxes on it, stood to benefit from blowing up the Nord Stream, or as the press secretary says, the Nordstrom.
The Nordstrom pipeline. She can't get dresses anymore. The Nordstrom pipeline is blown up. But wait a second, Charles.
I did blow up this Extra Avenue pipeline.
You got to hold the phone a second. Cy Hersh said that they didn't break any laws to blow up the pipeline? How is that not,
Because he claims, and he said he'd studied it, that there is no specific law that says you can't blow up a pipeline.
What?
There are laws saying you can't cut telephone cables.
But isn't it somebody else's property and you're destroying it?
Well, I would argue that even if that's true, there is a law as vice president, as senator, as candidate, then as president, taking money through family members from donors who then derive benefits, especially if those donors are foreign-controlled corporations, not registering under FARA. There are a raft of huge laws against all that, particularly when your family is not declaring the income. You can't. There's no, on your 1040. There's no line for bribe.
Yeah, well,
so
they categorize it as entertainment.
An incentive payment.
Yeah. That seems ridiculous to me to say that there's no law against blowing up a pipeline. It's destruction of property. I mean, frankly, it's a declaration of war. What would the United States say if Russia blew up some major internet cable or something that disrupted communication from the United States to Europe? Or, I mean, even that is not nearly as bad. You could reestablish internet communication with satellites. You blow up that kind of hard infrastructure. What if Russia blew up the Holland Tunnel? What would they say?
Well, I think, there have been a lot of attacks on our infrastructure. And one way to square the circle here is, what if the people pushing Biden to do this and Sullivan to do this are greenies who are anti-fossil fuel, who want to see us move more rapidly off of fossil fuels into renewables? And if they're connected to the same people who are blowing up and attacking various parts of our critical infrastructure around this country, which there have been quite a few attacks.
Well, okay, but I mean, I think this pipeline destruction was just straight Victoria Nuland, Joe Biden, Jake Sullivan, State Department messing with Ukraine motivation. I don't think it had anything to do with green anything. I think they just wanted to create a situation where Germany had no choice but to be all in. And I think they probably anticipated that if Germany said, you know what, it's too cold, we need to buy gas from Russia, we're leaving this coalition, that would kind of shake it. And that by blowing up the pipeline and eliminating that option for Germany, they sort of said, oh, well, I guess we're in. I think.
Yeah, but I mean, these are the same people who want you to embrace a globalist system, and it's preposterous. Closest allies, that us, it took out the Permian Basin. It said, it's for your own good, Joe. France, Emmanuel Macron.
Yeah.
It peels himself away from a catered dinner, and hits the bomb button, and up goes Texas, wherever the Permian Basin is. It's ridiculous that we would do this to Germany.
And has Putin made any comments about the Cy Hersh reporting yet?
I don't know if Putin has, but I believe the foreign minister's spokesperson has said that Russia is demanding an accounting. Is what Seymour Hersh said correct? Yes or no?
Right.
Demanding an investigation, full-throated investigation involving interested international partners.
And I mean, Russia
It's a
must have
very-
investigated this, right? Didn't Sweden investigate something and say, oh, we don't want to tell you what we found? Because they obviously, I mean, if they found that Russia did it, why would they not tell you that?
Right. Well, all of these, you see, I think Sweden and Denmark and even Norway, they're all in for unregulated globalism.
Yeah.
The Swedes, the Norwegians, the Danes, they populate important positions throughout the UN, throughout multilateral organizations, and these are small countries, controlled in many cases by a limited number of families.
Huh. Doesn't the FBI office look abandoned, Charles? I mean, look at it. It's a wreck.
Well, I mean, I have to say, how could you report to work as an FBI agent now and take yourself seriously?
Right.
I mean, knowing what we know now know.
Right. The whole
number
agency
of
is a wreck.
Investigations that were, fake investigations, but nonetheless consumed 4 years in the case of the Clinton Foundation from 2001 to 2005. And how many, I don't know if it's been continuous, 2016 January to the present, 7 odd years. And they can't see the obvious frauds there. They can't spot them with the Biden foundations or the Bush foundations or the Obama foundation. It's just obvious.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't think they're in the business that we think they're in. That's my opinion.
Sad.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then now, what do you think, Charles, that we've arrived at a place where the White House is telling you with a straight face that there's no evidence of extraterrestrial activity? Oh, okay. That's normal now. That's the new normal,
There's a
Charles.
funny Babylon Bee that's right on point, and you and I were chuckling about this. I don't know anybody at the Babylon Bee, but it basically says the aliens have left the White House exasperated because there's no way that Joe Biden could be the leader of the free world. They're trying to find the true leader of the free world because he's so incompetent.
I believe it.
Well, I mean, the whole White House the whole practice of conducting these White House press conferences needs to change. I mean, if you're not going to put somebody out there who's informed and can answer questions, then don't hold the press conference. Don't waste our time.
Yeah.
You either are going to be transparent. I mean, think about, I was a little bit critical of Donald Trump holding as many interactions as he did with, he flew up to New York, or when he was in New York in transition, he met with Maggie Haberman and the editorial staff of the New York Times, and he treated them like shit. He tolerated them.
I think he really enjoys schmoozing, right? He's like working the room kind of guy, even if people are jerks.
Well, I think it's one thing to go, you just won an historic election, you've displaced somebody who was sure she was going to win because she thought she'd rigged the election, is my guess. And you go over to the New York Times building, what I would say to the New York Times is, okay, you want to interview me? You do know where Trump Tower is, or wherever.
Yeah, why didn't he tell them to come to
see
him?
me,
Right.
and I'm going to tell you who could come. You can have 3 reporters or 5 reporters. I'm not going to go into a conference room and let a whole bunch of people pepper me with questions on
Right.
your home turf. Secure in the knowledge that whatever I say you're going to shade to make me look stupid.
Right.
I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to start with the New York Times. I'm not going to elevate them or confer the status that they're the paper of record. They're not the paper of record. They're the paper of deplorable.
Yeah. Pretty terrible. It's got a real growing homeless problem here in D.C., Charles. Really all around the country. Poverty and crime and crazy people everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, I could give you a bum report I haven't shared with you yet, that in front of your favorite pizzeria, Joe's Pizzeria, the gentleman who was in my bank branch, not wearing a shirt, trying to get change that he'd scrounged up and converted into paper money,
Must have been the manager.
now placed himself in front of Joe's Pizzeria. And the other day I walked by, I think it was yesterday, I was walking by, and he was itching himself and pulling insects out of his head.
Oh,
Just blocking the entrance to Joe's Pizzeria.
yikes. You charge extra for toppings.
Sorry. Well, I thought you might be getting ready to have a nice hors d'oeuvre, a bug sandwich or something.
No, Klaus Schwab couldn't make the meeting, so no bug sandwiches today. I mean, I guess when Congress is not in session, DC is kind of dead. Like I said, I don't really know how to be like a DC, whatever. But, my mission today in Congress was not nearly as successful as previous missions. We'll see if any of the senators' staff follow up. I'm going to keep going back there, Charles. My goal is to get this information from the Twitter coup report to people who can do something with it. There's been a lot of criticism of those House Oversight Committees saying that it's, partisan tit for tat stuff, that they don't like Hunter Biden and they don't like his laptop, so it's all about that. I don't agree with that, and I'm hopeful that if we can introduce some of this other information and go a little further back than just 2020 or 2016, people start to understand exactly what is going on over there at Twitter. The other thing is I've been watching some of those hearings again because I think you can really gain a lot from watching things a second or a third time, particularly with regard to the nuance of some of the things that some of the speakers say. And I was watching this segment where Yoel Roth was answering questions, and it just seems to me that they're not quite digging into the heart of this matter. We need to move past Yoel Roth, and we need to get to Adam Sharp and Barack Obama and Valerie Caproni and ask them, what is all this evidence that Goodman has uncovered? Why were all these lawyers going back and forth between the U.S. government and Twitter? And how did this all really get started? Because it's not about, the Democrats were trying to say, oh, well, here's Donald Trump asking them to remove a tweet. And of course, he was doing that in his capacity as a Twitter user. He didn't say, hey, the White House is telling you you have to ditch this tweet. So they really are not comparing apples to apples, in my opinion. And I'm hopeful that we can help move that in a direction that'll actually get some justice. A lot of people don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, people are rightfully skeptical that the very powerful, supposedly very powerful people among us will abide by the laws. You're on the expert slope to hell, down to hell, when you allow this behavior to go unpunished.
Yeah, and it's
so
an icy day.
I remain hopeful that at the end of the day, we're going to see a large number of malefactors held to account one way or another, whether polls or jury trials or impeachment convictions.
Yeah.
It's a long process you and I have done together, and we still don't have. Hillary Clinton's still in her boo-boos and private jets and Chardonnay vets with her various friends and people, counting her dividends and her interest payments for not really doing any honest work.
Did you see this Valentine tweet that Bill Clinton posted?
I didn't want to look at it. What did it show?
I mean, I almost felt like it was somebody trolling them because it was such a crappy, ugly picture. I mean, as disgusting as Hillary Clinton is, there are some pictures of the Clintons when they're younger where, her hair is done up and she's wearing a dress. And it's like, oh, well, I mean, all right. I mean, she's looks like somebody's wife, pretty enough, Now she obviously looks like an uninflated bag of crap. And in this picture, it's just like the most terrible picture of the two of them. I mean, if you're going to post, it's from the 60s or the 70s or something. But in my mind, if you're going to post some ancient picture, it's a little loud. Sorry, Charles. It just seems to me if he's going to post some historic picture of them, romantically in love or whatever, he chose a real ugly one. Now, Charles, this is the museum. That's why I brought him up. Yeah, he hasn't said anything really. This is the museum. They seem to be destroying it or renovating it or something. Yeah, I've been in there with the 9/11 Lawyers Committee. Yeah, so I don't know what Bill Clinton is doing, putting out trolly-looking tweets. At CS The Truth, still banned from Twitter, but it's good for people. People are excited that you're back on there, Charles, and people who aren't yet following you should do that at Charles Ortel. And thank you for tweeting about the show. Everything helps. You know, there's just been an amazing push, Charles, since I started this RICO action, which I think involves some people who are connected to some of those cases we were talking about in that Zero Hedge article just earlier. But since I began that RICO action, there's been an unprecedented push to destroy Crowdsource the Truth, to occupy all my time, to try to destroy me, to try to bring criminal charges against me. I can't really even talk about it fully, but it's pretty, I don't want to use the word impressive, but there's quite an effort underway.
There's quite a lot to hide.
Yeah, so I hope that people will become sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth. It's very difficult to get the word out now because so much of that effort is designed to suppress Crowdsource the Truth, keep me off of YouTube, keep me off of Twitter, keep me off of anywhere that these messages can go out wide. So if people are watching this right now, even if you are a sponsor or not, please share this video and send it out. And I would encourage people to become sponsors on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. Because I couldn't be doing this, coming to DC. I mean, Charles, I would have been off the air a long time ago if it weren't for the sponsors. And even when we do these free shows, I know a lot of people don't like it when I put things behind a paywall, as they say, but there's just simply no way for me to sustain an effort like this for 6 years without monetizing it. So I really do appreciate the sponsors of the show. And now, Charles, I'm right here by the Smithsonian. It's a nice building. It's like it's shaped like an H.
I'm not an exhibit there yet.
Well, I don't get it.
For my age.
Oh, yeah. Well, Dianne Feinstein
People
could
tell
be.
me though that it's woke, the Smithsonian. That you go in there and you read, you go and you see something you think you understand a little bit concerning, and instead of the standard narrative, it's a woke, anti-capitalist, anti-constitution analysis of our history.
I believe it.
Distressing.
Yeah, I believe it. That is distressing. I mean, you know, like I said, DC, it's nice from the standpoint of the architecture. And I mean, I don't know, I can't really look at that sky and not feel like, hey, what a nice day. Some people will say it's chemtrails. I don't know.
Is that from Ohio?
No, I mean, well, that's the other thing I was thinking about is the EPA is telling everybody, oh, no, it's safe. Don't worry about those dead chickens and dead fish. I mean, the thing that is super interesting about all of the citizen journalism that's been happening, and I'm not even talking about people doing things like we are, even just somebody, there was a woman on Twitter who got like millions of views just saying, look at this, there's this stream and here's all these dead fish, there's a dead fish, there's a dead fish, there's a dead fish. Now, the wokesters will look at that and say, oh, I fact-checked this and, you know, 300,000 fish die every day and, you know, this could be whatever. But like, this lady is there in East Palestine, Ohio, looking at a stream and there's a ton of dead fish in it while there's a big chemical cloud, and the EPA is saying, nah, it's fine. Didn't they also say that 9/11 was fine? You can go into that smoky soot and dig everybody out, and then now we saw that firefighter who started a charity about, he said he had cancer. Everybody was getting cancer.
Right.
I don't think you can sue the FDA for the EPA for that. They're just like, oh, whoops.
Well, and in sort of related news, did you see there's some idiot congressperson, I'm not sure, there are a lot of them, but this is a woman who decried the fact that some Family Heritage Council had tweeted out that you should endeavor to have a married husband and wife raise a child. And this congressperson cited that as disgusting and un-American thinking.
Hate speech? I don't know. You know, the other, just on that note, and just back to the Twitter hearing for a second, it was amazing. See, so somebody wants the right to say that, and I support their right to say you should have a family like that, a traditional family. Somebody else has the right to disagree with it, but the people who want to cancel anything lawful but awful, their position is you are transphobic and putting other people at risk if you won't, as a cis male, date a transgender woman, or if you say you don't agree with the transgender agenda or whatever. That's hate speech, and they want to cancel you for that, but you have to listen to their side. And this person saying, well, I support the concept of a traditional family, they just want to cancel that. They no debate, you're just not allowed to say your part, and you have to listen to their part.
Well, again, I go back to Thomas Jefferson's original intent, and you can see that by reading books about him, what he actually wrote, his own letters. The intent of the First Amendment is to protect lawful but awful speech.
Right.
Knowing full well that it is awful speech. Speech it will be deemed awful by the entrenched government powers that are trying to stifle any kind of amendment or course correction that the populace wants to force upon their quote rulers at the time. So it's criticism, even if it's invalid. It's criticism that is encouraged by the First Amendment, with the idea that if the person can criticize, then they better be able to be criticized for their criticism.
Right.
And that's a healthy, robust debate, and an environment where you have that. And it doesn't say anything in the First Amendment about being respectful, but I would add respectful, is key to the advancement of civilization. If you don't have that, you're going to just compound your worst mistakes. And you can end up with people like Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Hillary Clinton and George W. Bush and others occupying positions of power, misplacing the trust that they should guard carefully, and perpetrating, in the case of Joe Biden now, the worst disasters. Now, this has to be the worst 2-year and 1-month tenure of any modern president.
I say any president at all. Who could have been worse? Chemical spill, Afghanistan, starting a war, with Russia, blowing up the pipeline, turning the United States into essentially terrorism for hire. It's crazy.
Yeah, and saying, for example, on the income tax, I know, the numbers are definitive. Already, it's the high-earning people who pay a majority of all the taxes. And there's no way to take those high-earning people who are wealthy, who have beyond their annual incomes, have wealth many times their annual income. There's no way you're going to squeeze enough juice out of their lemons to fund these expansive programs and, quote, balance the budget when you're burning up Afghanistan, burning money in Ukraine, burning money on these climate change projects that are never been a problem. Today, the SBA announced that they're not going to go after people who should have paid back those PPP loans.
Oh, what? Why?
$100,000 or less.
Holy cow! But they want $600 transactions from the IRS, but not $100,000 if you stole it from the COVID funds.
Right, and so you have, it's havoc. And anyway, so they on the one hand say that they're only going to raise taxes on people making more than, I think it was $400,000 or $450,000 a year.
Right.
But in their first move, the IRS is saying, well, actually now we're going to sic agents on those notorious highly paid waiters and waitresses who are not reporting tips. I mean,
this is crazy. They absolutely have to be going after the charities, these law school professors who can just pony up $25 million. I mean, how the hell on earth? I don't think we've given that enough attention. How the hell on earth did that occur?
Well, because the legal, it's really supply and demand. There is a growing and gigantic demand for the limited number of places at the prestige academic institutions in this and other countries. Many times the number of students and parents want their kids to go to these places, and they will pay any price to get them in. So the people who run these prestige places have that going for them. Then they also have the ability to get all the government grants to further finance real expensive lifestyles. Beyond that, they decide, they're the ultimate social engineers. They decide which theories are debunked and which ideas get the Harvard seal of approval as being sensible. And when Harvard decides that Jason Goodman is going to be the next dean of the law school,
That would be awesome.
immediately, you're catapulted into this position of enormous power. They take some third-rate scholar and make that person president of Harvard. You decide who gets honorary degrees. You oversee faculty decisions. You're schmoozing with the richest people on earth who are trying to get Johnny and Jilly into Harvard.
Right.
So it's just, there's no over. The IRS is not going to do anything about it. The state of Massachusetts is not going to do anything about it. Donors don't care.
Terrible.
It's an enormous grift mill system.
Yeah. No, all of them are. I mean, just smaller scale than Harvard, People probably would do that for NYU as well. There seems to be a lot of swamp monsters occupying NYU Law School. I was thinking about this while I was waiting to start inside the Capitol. It really seems, Charles, that the deep state swamp rats are capturing their disciples. Certainly in college, they're if you go to law school, they're like, hey, are you down for being a scumbag lawyer? Oh, okay, you can come work for us, or whatever.
Well, take for example Barack Obama.
Yeah.
How he got into Harvard Law School,
All
perhaps
will
we'll
lead.
never know.
I think all will lead.
How he was. Somebody said, let's make this guy president of Harvard Law Review. And why the story has not been blasted out there by all these people who want to make sure that every aspect of the Trump family resumes are triple and quadruple check. How come nobody at the New York Times and Washington Post and other places has said, president of the Harvard Law Review is a bullshit job. You're the publisher. You're a business manager of the rag. You're not deciding which are the best notes. You're not even writing a note for the law review. So on the strength of that credential, they tried to immediately say, this guy walks on water or whatever the equivalent is. He's destined for greatness. He gets a book deal, and we know the history. So this happens a lot. I mean, to a certain extent, it happened not because I was not interested in politics, but it happened to me to a certain extent. I got into a good university, and I got into a tough program in senior year, and because of the things I'd done, I got into Harvard Business School right away. Because of that, I got to Wall Street right away. So you can take somebody who is playing by the rules and who's not playing by the rules and send them on a trajectory that is ascending much more quickly. And that's enormous power if you're crooked. Enormous.
Yeah.
Especially if you do the union approach, the public sector union approach, which is, okay, you'll get this job over here, but you're going to kick 10% back to me for your whole life, 15% back to me in cash. And that's how you're going to get this job. And if you won't do that, there's 16 other people who are going to do that. And if you want to try to rat me out, we got a lot of bridge construction projects going on, and we use a lot of concrete. People disappear around here.
Right. It's amazing, Charles. There's so much swamptastic swampiness. We got to
They
keep.
give you a choice. It's Harvard or Hoffa.
Right. Well, we got to keep fighting it. I mean, it's the only option. Otherwise, you can't give up. But we're going to prevail, Charles. I think that when you endeavor to do good, the universe conspires in your favor.
I hope you're right. I tend to agree with you. Now, did you hear the latest? You may not have heard this because this happened just now.
What?
They changed the tagline for the Washington Post.
Oh, really? Not democracy dies in the darkness. Democracy dies in our
Yeah, they
newsroom.
changed the S to a D. Democracy died in darkness.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Well, there's obviously a ton of stuff to discuss, Charles. I'll be back in New York pretty soon, and I know people. We still haven't done a Sunday walk around, so this was sort of the intermediary walk and talk. Was there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, get back safely. I look forward to. I hope we can walk because I like to get the exercise. And
Yeah.
I think we need to start encouraging the bums who inhabit Washington Square Park and other portions of Manhattan to reach out to the Biden administration and run
A lot of
for
available
Congress,
positions.
Seat when he has to hang
Oh,
up his
what
furrows,
happened
take
with him
photos.
in the hospital? Is he still in the hospital?
He went in and he's out again, but he's revealed, I don't know when, that he hears voices.
Oh.
I mean, so do most of the people in that party.
Man.
So do most rhinos.
Yeah, maybe they're smarter than he is, and they'll tell him to do something good. But we'll have to monitor those voices in Fetterman's head. Maybe Elon Musk could put a chip in there, and we could record them, and he could have a podcast of the voices in his head. But until that happens, Charles, I hope that people will sponsor Crowdsource the Truth on subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth, or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth, or my new favorite, odyssey.com/@crowdsource the truth. Charles, I'll see you back in New York pretty soon. Thanks for joining us in Washington, D.C., everybody. This wasn't the best Washington, D.C. mission, but they can't all be super winners. The next one will be. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great night.